As we unpack each of the 6 principles of trauma-informed care, it'll be important for us to remember that TIC is not just about being kind or considerate. It's about promoting an environment and interactions that bring the full brain online. Remember that certain functions of the brain are impacted when our brains are dysregulated or triggered. Each of these 6 principles seeks to honor the full human being and to uplift our sense of safety, power, and value. Remember the 4 R's: realize, recognize, respond, and resist. Well, the principles really help us with the second 2, respond and resist re-traumatization. Everyone has a role to play in TIC, and so ultimately the goal is to understand the essence of these principles, recall why they are important through the trauma lens, and then be able to get creative about when, where, and how they are applied. As you hear about each principle, consider how you can put each into practice, how the organization might put each into practice in its policies, procedures, and practices. And finally, consider how each of these ways of applying the principles would improve everyone's experience. So here are the principles of trauma-informed care. The first is safety. Strive to provide physically and emotionally safe space while taking into account how this is experienced differently. Trust and transparency. Build and maintain trust by elevating the importance of consent and lack of secrecy. Peer support and mutual self-help. Make efforts to reduce power differences by establishing safety and hope, building trust, enhancing collaboration, and utilizing lived experience to promote shared value. Collaboration and mutuality. Prioritize the power of connection and relationship, and recognize that everyone has a role to play in a trauma-informed approach. Empowerment, voice, and choice. Build upon strengths and skills, and utilize people's input and choice in decision-making and plans of action. The 6th, and yet embedded in all, is cultural, historical, and gender considerations. Actively acknowledge past and current harm done, for example, historical trauma, and practice inclusion in your policies, protocols, and processes. Let me share an example with you of a situation that could have used consideration of each of these principles in order to make an individual's experience less stressful and potentially traumatizing. When you are watching this scene, look for the principles when they come up throughout the story. When they're shown in red, that means this is a threat to one of the principles. When they're shown in green, that means that whatever is happening is more trauma-informed. An individual is at the Department of Motor Vehicles getting his license renewed. He enters the lobby and is not certain of where to go. But what if there's a sign that tells him where to go and points him toward the forms and the paperwork needed? There is an armed security guard at the door whose flat affect communicates a sense of anger and boredom. And there are many people huddled around him, causing him some stress and discomfort. But in keeping with trauma-informed care, a friendly volunteer comes to greet him and acknowledges that today is a busy day with many patrons. The volunteer assures him that the lines are moving fast and he will be seen soon. He moves over to the area with forms and paperwork and takes the papers he believes he needs and begins filling them out. He feels good about which papers he chose because he had already checked on the very helpful DMV website from home, and the signage is in multiple languages, allowing him to clearly make the correct decision. His friend couldn't come in with him to help with filling out the paperwork because there was no additional parking available in the parking lot. He is forced to complete the paperwork on his own. But what if the volunteer approaches and offers assistance, acknowledging that filling out new paperwork could be stressful and offers a drink of water? The lobby continues to get loud and uncomfortable. But he notices that there are different nooks that appear quieter, and he feels grateful not to have today's news on a flat screen TV blaring at him as well. Eventually, his number is called, and he approaches the teller, but he has trouble hearing what they are saying since their desk is so much higher than his chair level. He asks if there is anywhere else they could meet to accommodate his physical needs, but is met with a confused look by the clerk, and she says, "I'll have to speak to the manager about that, but now I need to finish your paperwork review." But what if instead the teller proactively comes around the corner from their desk and works with him in a location that's more suitable to his physical needs? And perhaps the teller acknowledges that the countertops are not accommodating of all needs and asks if there is anything else that would be needed at the moment for him to complete the process comfortably. They continue. The clerk proceeds to mispronounce his name as she reviews the paperwork. But in a trauma-informed way, she checks in with him if it's correct and apologizes for mispronouncing it all along. The teller hastily finishes the paperwork and says, "You'll be receiving a letter in the mail in the next 2 to 12 weeks. In a trauma-informed way, she acknowledges that such a wide gap in time may be difficult for some people to wait for a piece of mail, and offers him a tracking number where he could check the status of his application as it is processed. So these are just a few examples of what can be done using the principles. I'm sure you thought of others as well. Most importantly, remember this isn't about just being nicer. If the individual had never experienced any stress or trauma in their life, this experience as it was presented would have been difficult and uncomfortable. For those people, however, who are either already activated due to outside conditions, maybe taking 5 buses to get to the DMV, or have experienced chronic adversity, like experiencing racism every day of their life, this kind of experience could be very activating and in some cases re-traumatizing. We look to trauma-informed care as one of the many tools used to build a future that is marked by feelings of welcome, belonging, and safety.